Very nearly, gosh, I could just get it right. Very nearly about sailing, August 2023. I've changed the titles of the videos, by the way. Very nearly about sailing, that's too many words. VNAS is what I'm shortening to, but it's still very nearly about sailing. Welcome if you're new to this channel. My name is Paul, and there is a boat out there, so it is kind of relevant to sailing, some of what I'm doing. Last month I spent a long time tidying up what I was using basically as a dumping ground where I'm sitting now, which is actually a 23 foot by 8 foot container, and I didn't have any workspace. I've now almost finished doing that work, don't worry, I'm not going to show you any more of that, but I will do a full tour next month, and I now have an 8 foot by 12 foot area that's very configurable, so I can put in a sort of a workbench, more on that later. I've got some new toys. I've bought myself a table saw because there are some projects coming up that I really need to be a bit more accurate with. The holding tank is one of them, using HDPE. Finishing off the galley is another one, using a lot of construction and so on, and building things for the fridge. Finishing off the anchor locker and so on. There's loads of small projects that actually need a little bit of precision with woodwork and things. Not one of the things I'm good at. If you go back to, what was it? Was it March, April, May? I can't remember, where I made that piano lifter thing, which by the way is working great, but boy was that ropey. I was basically sticking bits of wood together and then filling it out with a box and just hoping it was working. My woodworking skills, well, I didn't really have any, and I'd always been a bit wary of it. So this video is all, by the way, are you sitting comfortably? Because I am. I started to use my woodworking skills to see if I could build, and I built it, a bench, a stool. And basically what I did, and it's come out very well, I think, my rules were that I wasn't going to use any screws, that however the joints turned out, that was the way it was going to be. So I glued it up just with the joints, and there's compound angles and all sorts of things here. So you know, it's not the simplest of jobs, but I want to get into the practice of doing things down to the millimetre or even the half a millimetre. And apart from that, so what I realise is when you do jobs, the first time you do it, it's pretty rubbish. The second time it's an awful lot better. The third time it's much better. If you really concentrate, it doesn't take long to get quite good, but the first time is usually quite rubbish. So I need a bit more practice in doing these things, and I also wanted to play with my table saw. So enough of the intro, let's just get on with this. Right, I want to play with my table saw. And the other thing I do actually need is I need some sort of a stool, because yeah, I can stand and work here, and it's a pretty good height, perhaps a little bit too low. Maybe if I do a more permanent one, it'll be just a little bit higher. But I want to make a workshop stool, and if I can't make one of those straight on the table stool, then I really do have problems. My plan, which is fall on the floor and stuck to the floor, is pretty basic. I went into a knit one from my sister's kitchen, and I drew the basic sizes. I'm going to start off with the legs, because the legs, each of the four legs, whether or not I make it square or sort of a different shape, they're going to be exactly the same. So basically we're going to have a seat here, four legs, it's just a front view, splaying out a bit. I'm going to put one thing up there and one thing there. If you want it in 3 dimensions, by the way, it's kind of, we'll have to wait for that. So I want that to be about 25 inches. I think that angle, based on just sort of holding this up and looking, I think about 5 degrees is about right. The floor is not exactly correct here, but I can get, if I set this as being 0, because this is my sort of reference thing, it'll go blink, 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 and then that'll come up with a 0 eventually. Blink, 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 there we are, 0. And then if I set this on here, And you can see that's pretty spot on 90, because that's where I sort of set it to when I set up the saw. And then I'm going to wind this down until it says 85-ish. And the thing is, it doesn't need to be deadly accurate, because I'm actually going to then use this angle and I'm going to cut a piece along here, and that's going to be my reference 5%. Does that make sense? So the first thing I'm going to do is do a cross cut on this, and I'm going to do it using the little, what are they called, mitre fence things that come with it. These have a reputation for being very wobbly. This in here, that's inexcusable, but to be quite honest, that's what happens if you get a cheap one. And I've got it all locked down so it won't move. It's a learning process. I'll lock that down and read what that says. Actually, that does say 0. Actually, that does say 0, so, you know. Hats off evolution there. So yeah, that's pretty much on the 85 line. The 85 line is actually just hidden by that, but that is accuracy. And I've written on 85 on there, and then I've written on 85 on there. So I now can, when I'm matching the other bits off, and when I'm setting the blade, I'll set it to this and not to these. So I'm locking the mitre down, and that says, actually it says 5 degrees. I can't complain if that's 5 degrees and that really is 5 degrees, can I? That's, yeah. Roughly in the middle, or as exactly in the middle as I can get it. And that, try not to bend the blade, that is exactly there. And what does that read on this thing? That reads 4 3/4 degrees. Haha! So you're not so accurate there. So I've got this set at 5, got that set at 5. That should give me a nice compound thing. Is that what it's called? Compound something? So this should be leaning in 2 directions at 5 degrees each, and I've got my handy 5 degree thing. Yeah, that's leaning 5 degrees that way, and it's leaning 5 degrees that way. Who'd have thought it? Blimey. That's just the one end though, it's doing the other end, because the other end has to be the other way round. Let's burn that bridge when we get to it. Basically the deal is with these things here, they obviously have to have a 5 degree there, top and bottom where they meet that, but where they, and I will go a bit 3D here, where they go in here, that's really badly drawn, isn't it? Where they go in here. This face here, this face is not vertical, that goes back at 5 degrees as well. So if you think of the piece of wood that you start off with, God, this is dreadful, isn't it? So I can never become a teacher. basically what you need to cut a piece out of it, and I've exaggerated, that's that shape. Right, so in theory this idea of just kind of cutting a bit more off, bit more off, bit more off and kind of sneaking up to it worked fine. So I've got 4 edges which are pretty much 40 millimeters each. Did I say sketchy regarding the glue up? Well, here you go. As I say, I'm gluing these first and then I'm going to do the doweling, and I haven't quite decided with these, I haven't cut them yet, whether they're going to go at the same level as the other ones, but I've got the top ones in. Easy to get the top ones the right way around because you've got a kind of flat surface to work to. So this isn't glued yet, this is just bolted. This is just clamped. So what I'm going to do is rely on the other clamp to hold it for a minute, loosen this, and this should just drop out. Well, it won't because I'll catch it. Yeah. So, as I say, this is literally just to keep it together until such time as I do the dowels. So it doesn't need to be fantastically glued, although this stuff always amazes me just how strong it is. This is simply what I'm doing. Don't do what I do. But if I can do it, you can definitely do it. No doubt whatsoever. And yeah, I know I should put angled things on it, blah blah blah, all sorts of stuff, but for this will be good enough. I might put a clamp up underneath it to stop it slipping down actually, because that is quite slippery with the glue on it. So this is literally just to stop it. Right, so here it is. This is the state of it, having just taken the clamps off. And I didn't clamp this up particularly carefully. I didn't want to, because what I wanted, the aim of this was to see if it was possible to make something simple like this with compound angles. So you know, these are splayed out 5 degrees that way. These are everything here has got a compound angle in it of some sort. It's just using the measurements from the table saw and then gluing it together and relying on these faces to see if that would kind of work out. Right, this is very simple. I nearly wasn't going to video it, but I thought I will, because when I first tried this I got it wrong. I bought this tiny little, and I've called them Japanese saws. What I didn't realise is they're called, I think, Japanese pull saws, because I got it for chopping off the, when I did the handrail and I put the plugs in and I used it to kind of saw off the things, and I was pushing. I didn't realise that you actually pulled. It's got one edge for hardwood, one edge for softwood. This is softwood. And these just cut through, and I made a bit of a mess of it and I had to actually fill it in. But these, and I've done the 2 on this side and just sand them down a little bit. These just literally, you put it up against the edge, you can do 2 at once if you want, and you pull it, and you just, it's so simple. You don't push it, you pull it. It's called a pull saw for a reason. Who'd have thought it? And I say, this is basically a toy one. This is tiny, look, that's the size of my hand. I shall definitely be getting one of the bigger ones than this. Now I know how to use it. It's absolutely fantastic. So I'm just going to cut these off, give it a quick sanding down, and then give it a longer, better sanding down, ready for painting it. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is the seat, and as I said, I've drawn this out. I don't know if you can see that, I traced round an existing stool, and I'm going to make it out of 25mm plywood, but I also want to scoop it. I want to make that, I don't know what you call it, a butt scoop. Let's call it a butt scoop. From now on it's known as a butt scoop because it's just a little more comfortable. And obviously if I scoop out plywood, which is what I'm going to make it out of, you'll get a really funny sort of grain pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it with end grain. Right, so you will have seen this before, you might not have. So I have these, having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 strips, which is plenty. And then what you do is you literally just turn them over so that the end grain's showing, clamp it down, leave it overnight, and then I'm going to resaw it again. And it will look beautiful. in theory. Right, we're getting to the bit where it all magically will hopefully start to make sense. Got to be honest, it's beginning to look like I haven't made enough. But basically what you do, because you can see the stripiness there, and you turn each other one around. Right, change plan. There was a plan, you say? Yes, there was a plan. Cheek. I've decided, I've rounded these corners off a little bit. There's a bit of a gouge down there, and that actually wasn't my fault. I've got some really cheap router tools, so I need to upgrade that, so that's something I've learned. So I've rounded off these corners, and I thought it would look silly to have this as sort of an oval. I'm going to do a bigger round off at the back and a smaller one at the front. And I've actually marked, it says front here, so I'm not going to get it mixed up. And I'm putting the best side forward, as it were. So I'm just going to draw a couple of lines around there, cut that out, and then I've got an exciting idea. I think it's exciting, which means it probably won't work, for, what do they call it? The butt divot, the butt shape thing, the hollow, to make it more comfortable. Anyway. What is this I hear you say? Has he sold out to the, what's yellow, DeWalt or Festool or something company and being sponsored? No, this is pure Heath Robinson. Now this has got to be the most rubbish thing either I or anybody else ever bought off the internet. So I've got some red dots here. I'm just going to go around all the red dots. That's tight. This is so sketchy. So sketchy. Right, so I've got three lots of holes. I've got deep holes, less deep holes, and shallow holes. And I've got my favourite tool. I've mentioned this before. This is great for fiberglass work. So it's an angle grinder with very, very solid flappy disc thing. Right, just in case this wasn't clear, and I'm sure that it isn't, this is basically a case of drawing the dots. So you sand it down, trying to keep the sort of the depths all equal, and then you know that you're following the contour. So all in all, that kind of went well. I don't know if you can see how much of a scoop there is there, but it does make a difference. It's a lot more comfortable sitting on it. Right, let's just do a quick video. Right, let's just do a quick video before I paint it, before I forget. So these I've given it a light sanding and a bit of a dusting off. Some of the joints I think have come out quite well. You know, better than I was imagining they would, to be fair. You know, that's actually quite nice. So literally all I've done is glued it, clamped it roughly. Well, you've seen what I did. Some of them not so good, like that one there. And I think part of that is the mitre thing on the table saw. It kind of wobbles a little bit. Top, you can see that I'm going to put dowels in this to glue this on. Top's come out very well, but I was kind of expecting that too. That was probably the easiest bit, but it's all nice and sort of parallel and so on. Let's have a look at the lower joints. Not so good. So if you remember, I kind of used this as the reference, clamped these up first, and then fitted the lower legs. The lower legs? We're talking about the lower legs. Lower, don't know what they're called, spacers, joint things. So you can see that's not particularly good. That's about 3/4 of a millimetre gap there. Probably about 1/2 millimetre gap there. Obviously got dowels through it, so it's plenty strong enough. That's not too bad. That's not too bad at all, actually. Reasonably flush. You can see I haven't given it particularly good sanding because there's still pencil marks and things on it. Not too bad. There's a bit of a gap. I don't know if you can see that. Bit of a gap back there. Not great. But and I'm not going to try and fill it in. I'm not going to try and cover it up. I'm literally just going to paint this now. I think I'm going to put Danish oil on the top, but I'm just going to paint this. And I quite like the grey that I did the piano lifting thing, but so I've got some actual paint because that was undercoat. That's undercoat and top coat on it. So I quite like grey painted wood. I could finish this off a lot better, a lot nicer, but it is a workshop stool. It is going to get kicked about, so it's not fine. And it's only made out of it's not even CLS. It was some other type of timber. I think the CLS timber worked out better, so I think I might just go for CLS. CLS stands for Canadian Lumber Standard, and it's the sort of smaller 2x4s. Anyway, next time you see this, it'll be painted, and as you can see, I said the dowels are only sticking out a tiny bit at the top because I've probably actually gone a bit further than I wanted to in doing the seat. Whoops, but that'll be strong enough. So, there we go. It's finished, it's comfortable, and it works. And I shall prove that because I'm about to sit on it. The foot thing is just exactly the right height. It's very comfortable. It will be great for sort of working at this bench and other things, because you don't always want to be kind of leaning over stuff. Yeah, it could have been a lot better. And there's a few lessons that I've kind of learned. Let me just change the camera angle a bit. That's better. There are a few things that I've learned on it. I didn't until halfway through making this stool actually look at other YouTube channels of people doing woodworking and doing it, and I'm surprised to see there's actually loads specifically on making a stool, better than I have. And also on woodworking. One of the things that I've noticed on the woodworkers, one of the issues that I had, bear with me, one of the issues that I had, and this sounds like I'm being really down on Evolution, I'm not. The Evolution Rage 5S is what I bought as a table saw. It folds up nicely, it's out of the way, it's incredibly precise, I like the blade, I've had an Evolution circular saw for ages. But things like this track mitre thing, it's rubbish. It wobbles about like mad. You know, I'm looking for accuracy of less than 1/2 millimetre, which is for Americans is about a 64th of an inch, which I think is reasonable. Absolute pants. This thing is awful. So I'm going to modify this. The throat, this plastic thing, I did get a 0 clearance one with it, but this wobbles about like mad. I'm going to make some more because they only give you one, and you can't buy the individual anyway. So I'm going to make some more of these, and so I'm going to have, I've already got the 0 clearance 90-degree one, I want a 45-degree one, I also want a few blanks if I'm doing other specific things, because as you're pushing wood through, this bends, and that's one of the problems I had with the HDPE when I was cutting it, is it bent and things went out of kilter. A lot of people who use table saws, I've noticed on YouTube, they build jigs, they build cross-cut sleds and things like that, and I'm going to need to do that. The other thing I've noticed is that the routing, I've always used a handheld router with some very cheap routing bits. I'm going to actually convert this, I'm going to make a proper bench and have a routing bench, so I need to do that. So there's a few things I I need to do. You'll have noticed, by the way, it's only a few months ago that I actually bought one of these. I'm holding on to this speed square like it was a sort of comfort blanket throughout this video. Previously, my only tool was one of those. I'm also going to make a sort of a sanding jig because I don't use this for anything else, but even just clamping a few things together to actually have a nice sort of sanding machine. It's not particularly big. That will do good. Whoa, crunch. So anyway, as I say, that's it for this month. Sorry if that was a bit boring for people who know how to do this stuff. I am going to make another one of these chairs because I'm going to make these improvements. Just things like putting the dowels in from the outside. No, I want to be able to put the dowels in from the inside so they're kind of hidden, and then clamp it up properly. I literally, with this one, I just clamped it up. And if it didn't line up, that was tough. I would then have a wobbly chair, and that would serve me right, just to show that I actually couldn't do it, although it worked out remarkably well. So I'm very pleased with the way this works. I actually enjoyed it. That's the other thing. I never used to enjoy woodwork. I mean, I learnt a lot of it at school, but that was all sort of hand tools and stuff. I do have a plane somewhere. I've got a few hand tools. But anyway, so unfortunately, the next few months are going to be me getting myself sorted out to do these projects. I now have sorted out the workspace, that it's going to be a lot more efficient when I actually get back to both things. It means I can also work over the winter as well. So anyway, that was it. As I said, hope you're sitting comfortably, because I'm sitting very comfortably. This is so solid, really happy with this. It doesn't wobble either. I can't believe it. All the four legs actually hit the ground. And I will see you next month for more shenanigans. So this is Paul from Very Nearly About Sailing, signing off. See you next month. Bye.